I never thought the people I once cradled in my arms would one day laugh at me like I was some old fool. But life has a strange way of showing you what people really think of you when money gets involved. My name is Margaret Lewis, though everyone in my small town of Salem, Oregon, just calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, widowed for over a decade now, and I've spent most of my life working hard to build something from nothing. My late husband, Robert, and I owned a small but successful hardware store downtown. After he passed, I ran it alone for several years before finally selling it and putting the money into a few rental properties. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep me comfortable and independent. Family has always meant everything to me. That's why, when my brother's daughters, Jenny and Mara, started visiting me more often after Robert's death, I thought they genuinely cared. They'd bring me flowers on Sundays, help me with groceries, and call me Aunt Maggie in that sweet, loving tone that melted my heart. I never had children of my own, so in my mind, they were like my daughters. But I learned, painfully, that love spoken through smiles isn't always love that stays when you stop giving. It all began last winter when they started talking about a family investment. Jenny, the older one, was 28, sharp-tongued, confident, and working at some real estate firm in Portland. Mara was 26, quieter, but followed her sister's lead like a shadow. They told me about this new property deal, an opportunity for our family to grow wealth together. They said they wanted to include me because I deserved to enjoy the fruits of modern investments. At first, I was touched. They said they'd handle all the paperwork, that I didn't need to stress about the complicated stuff. But my instinct told me to take a look anyway. When I asked Jenny for a copy of the contract, she smirked. "Oh, Aunt Maggie," she laughed, glancing at Mara. "You don't have to worry about that. It's just technical language. You probably wouldn't understand half of it." Then came the words that pierced deeper than I expected. "She can't even read a contract, Mara. Let's not confuse her." The room went silent for a second. I laughed softly, pretending I didn't hear the insult. But inside, something cracked. Because I could read a contract. In fact, back when Robert and I ran our store, I handled every supplier deal myself. I just didn't brag about it. I looked at them, my nieces, my brother's girls, and realized they weren't here because they loved me. They were here because they thought I was useful. So I smiled, nodded, and said, "You're right, dear. Maybe you should read it for me." And that's exactly what I wanted them to do. Over the next few days, I quietly started reading through the documents they had left on the kitchen counter. Each page was filled with legal jargon and complicated clauses, but I took my time. I stayed up late, sipping tea under the dim light, tracing each line with my finger, muttering every word aloud like a secret prayer. And there it was, the clause that changed everything. It stated that the entire investment, including the property title, would be under Jenny and Mara's names only. My role? A silent contributor. In other words, once I gave them my money, I'd have no ownership, no control, nothing. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I'd sign, smile, and go back to my knitting and morning walks. But they didn't know I wasn't the fragile woman they imagined. Grief had taught me how to survive alone. And survival had taught me how to listen when others thought I couldn't hear. So I decided to play along. I'd let them think I was naive. I'd let them laugh again, until the day I'd be the one reading the contract out loud. As I sealed the papers back into their folder, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from resolve. For the first time in years, I felt that fire return to my chest, the kind Robert used to call my storm. And I whispered to myself, "Let's see who really can't read, my dears." For days after that moment, I carried their laughter in my ears like a ringing I couldn't turn off. "She can't even read a contract." Those words replayed every night when I tried to sleep. But instead of breaking me, they hardened something inside me. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time, act like the woman everyone underestimated. The next Sunday, Jenny and Mara came over again, cheerful as ever, carrying their laptops and coffee cups like real businesswomen. Jenny spread the documents on my kitchen table and said, "Aunt Maggie, if we sign this by next week, we can lock the property deal. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance." She spoke fast, her tone rehearsed. I just nodded, play my part. Oh, dear, I said, in my soft, trembling voice. I trust you girls completely. I'm just so proud you're doing all this family business work. Mara smiled sweetly. You'll love it, Aunt Maggie. It's like we're one big team. Team. Funny word, that one. Because teams don't trick their own. I made them tea, chamomile, like always, and pretended to listen while they explained how the investment would work. In truth, I was studying them. Jenny was too confident, talking with her hands, using big words she thought I didn't understand. Mara just nodded, letting Jenny lead. And I realized something important. Mara wasn't cruel, just afraid of losing her sister's approval. Jenny was the one holding the strings. After they left that day, I called an old friend, Thomas Green, our former family lawyer. He had helped Robert and me with our property sales years ago. Tom, I said, I need you to take a look at something for me. Quietly. He could tell from my tone that this wasn't small talk. When I told him about the contract, he sighed. They're trying to take advantage of you, Maggie. But don't confront them yet. Let's make sure you're covered legally. He suggested we draft a counter-contract, a mirror copy of theirs, except it would protect my assets completely. And that's when my silent game began. I spent the next few days pretending to be the same old, trusting Aunt Maggie. I baked cookies when they visited. I asked questions that made me sound confused. When Jenny threw financial terms at me, I'd blink and smile like I didn't follow. But every word, every detail I memorized. Meanwhile, Tom and I worked quietly. He advised me to transfer part of my savings to a private account and have the investment agreement reworded so that my contribution would hold equal ownership rights. Then he said something that stuck with me. Maggie, sometimes the best revenge is to let people underestimate you until it's too late. The day before we were supposed to sign the contract, I invited Jenny and Mara for lunch. I made their favorite, roast chicken and mashed potatoes, the kind of meal that makes everyone lower their guard. The house smelled like rosemary and trust. They arrived all smiles, hugging me like nothing was wrong. Jenny had the contract folder in her bag. Ready to become a real investor, Aunt Maggie? She said, laughing. I smiled. Oh, I'm ready, sweetheart. More ready than you think. As they ate, I looked at them, these girls I once took to the zoo, whose school plays I never missed. And now here they were, feeding on my kindness. How quickly love turns into leverage when money's on the table. After lunch, I excused myself to get my reading glasses. When I came back, I had Tom's version of the contract hidden beneath the original one. Jenny started explaining the pages again, talking over me, flipping fast. That's when I stopped her gently and said, Jenny, dear, could I try reading this one aloud? I want to feel involved. The room went quiet for a moment. She laughed, not kindly. Sure, Aunt Maggie. Go ahead. But don't worry if it doesn't make sense. I smiled and began reading, slowly, softly, each word deliberate. But what I read wasn't their version. It was mine. They didn't even notice at first. They were too busy smirking, whispering between themselves as I read. But when I reached the part about equal ownership rights and joint authority of all financial assets, Jenny's smile began to falter. Mara leaned in, confused. Wait, Jenny, that's not. Jenny shot her a glare, cutting her off. I closed the folder and said calmly, You're right, Jenny. Reading contracts is tricky, but not impossible. Their faces flushed. Jenny stammered, That's not the document we gave you. I looked her in the eye and said, No, it's not. Because I decided to read and write my own. They didn't know what to say. And I didn't need to say more. I just sat back, folded my hands, and let silence do the talking. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one who looked small. The silence after I finished reading that contract was the kind that squeezes your chest. Jenny stared at me, mouth half open, like she couldn't decide whether to yell or laugh. Mara's eyes darted from her sister to me, confused and frightened. She had never seen Jenny lose control before. Finally, Jenny slammed her hand on the table. What the hell is this, Aunt Maggie? Her tone wasn't polite anymore. The sweet niece, mask had slipped off completely. Stayed calm. It's the version I'll be signing, dear. You know, the one that actually treats me as part of this so-called family investment. Jenny's jaw tightened. You changed the terms. You had no right. I cut her off. I had every right, Jenny. It's my money. My contribution. You thought I would notice your little trick? Mara's voice trembled. Aunt Maggie, we weren't trying to trick you, we just… Jenny snapped. Don't say anything, Mara. That moment told me everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was greed, planned and polished. I stood up, my knees shaking slightly, but my voice didn't. You came into my house, used my love for you as bait, and thought you could take everything I worked for. That's not family, girls. That's theft in a dress. Jenny rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Don't act like some victim. You're old, Aunt Maggie. You don't even use half your money. We were just trying to do something smart with it. That word again, old. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice steady. Smart isn't stealing from the hands that fed you. Jenny stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. You'll regret this. You can't even understand what you're signing. I looked at her straight on. Sweetheart, I understood every single word. They stormed out that afternoon, slamming my door so hard the frame rattled. The sound echoed through my empty house long after they were gone. For the first time in years, the house felt heavy. Not because of loneliness. I was used to that, but because I realized the people I called family had only ever seen me as an easy target. I sat on the couch, clutching the folder, my heart aching but steady. A week passed before I heard from anyone. But when the phone finally rang, it wasn't Jenny or Mara. It was my brother, Frank. Maggie, what's going on? He demanded, not even a hello. The girls said you accused them of trying to scam you. You know they'd never do that. I stayed silent for a moment, then said, Frank, did they tell you what the contract said? He hesitated. They said you misunderstood it. Did you read it yourself? I asked quietly. His silence was my answer. I could almost hear Jenny's words in his mouth, the same rehearsed excuses, the same pitying tone. He sighed. Maggie, you've always been sensitive. Maybe you're just overthinking things. The girls are just trying to help. That broke me a little. Hearing my own brother defend their lies, it hurt more than their laughter ever did. Frank, I said softly, when you were 10 and you fell off your bike, who carried you 2 miles home? He paused. You did. And when Mom died, who handled everything because you said you couldn't bear to see her like that? Again, silence. I did that, Frank. For family. And now your daughters think it's okay to cheat me out of my life's work. He muttered something I couldn't catch and hung up. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, feeling the kind of pain that sits deep in your bones, the kind that doesn't make you cry, just empties you out. Days turned into weeks. Jenny stopped calling. Mara didn't text. Even at church, people started whispering. Someone had told them I'd had a mental episode, that I was confused about money. I knew exactly who spread that lie. But I didn't defend myself. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting. And I had something stronger than gossip proof. My lawyer had filed the correct version of the contract, fully registered and notarized. Every cent I invested was now legally protected. They couldn't touch a dime. Still, there was no joy in winning. When people you love betray you, victory feels hollow. Every corner of my house reminded me of them. The laughter that used to sound so pure, the hugs that once felt real. I'd look at the empty dining table and whisper, you could have had everything, love, trust, family, if only you hadn't laughed that day. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Jenny wasn't the kind to walk away quietly. And I could sense it. She was planning something. Something that would force me to fight harder than ever, not for my money this time, but for my name. It was about 3 weeks later when the next storm arrived. Not the kind that comes with thunder and rain, but the kind that wears perfume, smiles sweetly, and walks through your front door holding false apologies. Jenny and Mara showed up unannounced one afternoon. I was on the porch, watering the roses Robert planted the year before he died. Jenny waved, her smile too polished to be real. "Aunt Maggie, we just wanted to talk." I could have shut the door on them, but something in me, maybe old habit, maybe quiet curiosity, made me let them in. I poured tea again, because that's what I do. No matter how cold the world gets, I don't forget my manners. Jenny started the conversation in her sweetest voice. "We've been thinking about what happened. We realize it was all a misunderstanding." Mara nodded, eyes down. "We're sorry, Aunt Maggie. We just wanted to include you, not upset you." It sounded rehearsed, like an apology written by a lawyer and memorized on the drive over. I leaned back in my chair, watching them carefully. "You know," I said softly, "I used to believe every word that came out of your mouths. But now, I listen for what you don't say." Jenny's smile flickered. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a document. "Actually, Aunt Maggie, we just wanted to show you something. The company called. They said there's another form we all need to sign just for tax purposes." There it was. Another contract. Printed neatly, stapled tight, smelling of ink and deceit. I took it, pretending to scan the pages with tired eyes. But what I really saw was the trap. A transfer of rights, my ownership being moved temporarily to Jenny and Mara for administrative efficiency. If I signed that, my protection would vanish. They thought the old woman still trusted them. They thought they could trick me with sugar-coated lies. So I smiled and said, "All right, girls. Leave it with me overnight. I'll take it down to the notary in the morning." Jenny beamed. "Perfect. You're doing the right thing, Aunt Maggie." When they left, I didn't call my lawyer right away. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the papers, thinking about how greed can turn love into poison. Then I remembered something Robert used to say. "Maggie, never let anyone write your story for you. Hold the pen, even if your hands shake." That night, I held the pen. I took out my phone and called Tom. He came over the next morning, briefcase in hand, calm as always. After reading the document, he shook his head. "They're desperate. And this is illegal." He drafted a formal cease and desist letter, warning them that any further attempt to defraud me would lead to criminal charges. But that wasn't all. He also suggested we record any further conversations. "For your protection," he said. So I did. The next day, Jenny called again. "Aunt Maggie, can we come by to finalize things?" We brought the notary along. Perfect. When they arrived, a man in a suit, supposedly their friend, stood by the door with a clipboard. Jenny was confident again, too confident. I offered coffee, smiled, played the same part one had before. Then, while pretending to sign, I asked innocently, "Jenny, dear, could you just explain one more time what this paper does? I don't want to make a mistake." She laughed, the same cruel laugh from before. "Oh, Aunt Maggie, it just gives us temporary authority over your assets, nothing major. You wouldn't understand the wording anyway." That was it. Every word recorded. I looked her dead in the eyes and said quietly, "You're right. Maybe I don't understand everything, but I understand this. You just confessed to fraud." Jenny froze. Mara gasped. Tom stepped out from the kitchen, holding the letter in his hand. "Ladies," he said calmly, "I'm attorney Thomas Green. I believe this belongs to you." The color drained from Jenny's face. Mara whispered, "Oh my God." I sat there, still, composed, watching their arrogance melt into panic. Jenny tried to speak, her voice shaking. You set us up." I smiled faintly. "No, dear. I just let you show me who you really are." Tom handed them the letter. "Any further contact will be through legal channels. If you try to approach your aunt again regarding finances, we'll proceed with charges." They didn't argue. They couldn't. They left in silence, no slamming doors this time, no insults. Just two frightened girls walking out of the house they once owned with their laughter. As the door closed, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I went back to the porch and looked at the roses, the afternoon sun glinting off their petals. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But as I stood there, one thought lingered. Families break silently first, then all at once. And mine had finally shattered. Still, I wasn't broken. I was free. After they left that day, I didn't cry. Not a single tear. For a long time, I thought strength meant holding the family together, forgiving, forgetting, and pretending that love could fix everything. But standing there in the silence of my little house, I realized real strength is letting go of the people who choose to hurt you. It took me years to build what I had. And in just a few months, my own nieces tried to take it all, not because they needed it, but because they thought I was too old to notice. Too old to fight. Too old to matter. They were wrong. The next morning, I went for a walk through Bush's pasture park, where Robert and I used to feed the birds. The trees were turning gold, the air cool and clean. I sat on our favorite bench, the one with his name carved faintly into the wood, and let the sunlight touch my face. That's when the memories came back. The days when family used to mean Sunday dinners, laughter, and helping each other through storms. And I realized something painful but freeing. Not everyone who calls you family deserves to stay in your circle. A few weeks later, I got a letter. It wasn't from Jenny or Mara, it was from Frank. He wrote that the girls had packed up and moved to Portland. They'd lost their jobs after someone at Jenny's firm found out about the legal warning.
He didn't say.
I don't know what happened between you all, but I hope one day we can talk again. I folded the letter, tucked it away, and whispered, maybe someday. But I knew someday didn't mean soon. The peace that followed wasn't loud or triumphant. It was gentle. I started volunteering at the community library, helping adults who never learned to read. Every time I saw someone sound out a word for the first time, my heart swelled. It felt poetic. After all, reading a contract had saved me. One afternoon, a woman named Linda asked me why I spent so much time there. I smiled and said, because once, someone thought I couldn't read. And that moment changed everything. She laughed softly. Well, you sure showed them. I smiled back, but my voice was quiet. It's not about showing them. It's about showing myself I still can. Because that's the truth, isn't it? When people betray us, we think revenge will heal the wound. But real healing comes when you stand in your own strength, quietly, calmly, and realize you didn't need to destroy anyone. You just needed to stop letting them destroy you. A few months later, Mara came by alone. She looked different, thinner, tired, eyes red from tears. I hesitated but opened the door. Aunt Maggie, she said softly. I came to say sorry. You were right. Jenny pushed me into it. I should have stopped her. Her voice cracked. She held a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite. I don't expect forgiveness, she whispered. I just wanted you to know I learned my lesson. I didn't say much. I just hugged her. Because despite everything, I could see she meant it. And sometimes, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing your own heart. Before she left, she asked me, do you hate us? I smiled faintly.
No, dear.
Hate's too heavy for old bones. She cried, hugged me again, and walked away. I never saw Jenny after that. Maybe someday she'll learn. Maybe she won't. But that's no longer my burden. Now, when I water my roses, I think about how life always finds a way to bloom again, even after cruel winters. The laughter that once mocked me no longer echoes in my head. Instead, I hear Robert's voice, calm, proud, saying, you held the pen, Maggie. You wrote your own ending. And maybe that's the lesson I want to leave behind. If you're listening to this, and someone has ever made you feel small, like your time has passed, like your voice doesn't matter, remember this. You're never too old to read your own story, and you're never too weak to rewrite it. Because when they laugh at you, let them. Someday, you'll read the truth out loud. And they'll finally go silent.